Hello everybody, my name is Flame and welcome back to another video. Now, this video is a follow-up to my teaser that I had on my YouTube page just a few days ago, and this video is about latency and latency optimizations. Now, if you haven't already, please leave a like on this video and subscribe on my YouTube channel, as it does help me with the algorithm. And I want to address that yes, my upload schedule is less frequent, but there's very good reasons for that, and I have an update video coming soon explaining why. Now, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So here we have my optimized desktop. Now, when I showed that teaser, I showed that I had latency mon open and that my CPU was at 0.222 or like 0.2 or 0.4%. Now, these are latency numbers from LatencyMon after running for 4 to 5 minutes. Now that key bit there is 4 to 5 minutes. I ran it for 4 to 5 minutes and this did not change. This was from only a minute of runtime, but when in that video I made, I was running it for like 4 to 5 minutes. And now this right here is basically exactly what you want. You want every other core to be higher than CPU 0. You want CPU 0 to be your lowest, and I'm going to explain why right now. So if you didn't already know, if you were a tweaker or an extreme tweaker of Windows, CPU 0 essentially runs every single Windows service that is on Windows, and it also runs most of the applications that you are running and background services. Now, freeing up the resources on this leaves headroom for Windows to communicate to your hardware faster, which is the reason why when you have less things on your CPU 0, it feels faster. Now, let's go ahead and get started on latency reduction. So first thing I always like to do is I like to make sure that my Windows is up to date. Obviously my Windows is disabled, my Windows update, because I am on the latest update. I only enable Windows updates when there's a new update that comes out that I know is stable, but usually it's generally disabled. So go ahead, update before you do this video and make sure that it is all up to date. Once you're up to date, open up the search tab and then look for restore point. Go ahead here. You're going to wait for this little tab to load here, system protection. This is very important, guys. I need to touch on this so much. If this does not help you or this breaks things, please have a restore point. I know a lot of other YouTubers don't tell you to make a restore point that are either bad or worse YouTubers, or they just don't know what to do, and then they break their system and they can't restore it. So when you're here, you're going to see your local disk and any other drives that are connected. Make sure that all the other drives are off and make sure that the only one that is on is local disk system. Now hit create, and for example, we'll name it before tweak video, and we're just going to hit create. It's going to create a restore point, so that way we can reset all these settings after I've made these changes if they do not make a difference. It's going to take a second to create this because it is backing up your entire map of your registry, of your file system, of everything. And now once you've created a restore point, we can start with the video. So I generally like to go through the system settings here. So for example, here in system, first place I usually check is the notification and action center. I turn off show me occasional welcome experience, suggest ways. I just turn off these three down here. You can leave all these three on. Focus assist does not exist. I deleted this off of my PC. You can delete it through the registry. I would not recommend doing that because it does break a few things like this. Watch. See, it broke something. But essentially, you just want to disable everything inside Focus Assist and pretty much everything here on the bottom for notifications. Moving on, we're going to go down to storage. Make sure storage sense is off. Any auto storage optimization stuff is off. Go to tablet mode. If you're on a tablet PC, hit never use tablet mode when I assign. Actually, when you're on a tablet, make sure you have always used tablet mode on, and when you're not on a tablet, have never used tablet mode. And when you're on a device that is not a tablet, have it set to don't switch to tablet mode. But if you are on a device that is a tablet, make sure that ask me before switching is on, because then if you rotate your display like this or something like that, or this, then it will automatically rotate your display. Moving on, we're going to go to multitasking, disable all of this right here, every single one of these except for snap windows, because snap windows is still pretty useful. You can still snap things and stuff like that, I like snap windows, but some people have it disabled because it's kind of stupid. I personally don't care. Make sure that timeline is off. It's this right here. Let me show you what it is real quick. Oh yeah, that's right, I disabled it. But essentially, timeline is that little icon that shows up down there. You don't want that enabled. Alt plus tab, by default, this is going to be open windows and all tabs in Edge. Make sure this is set on to open windows only, so that when you're doing this, you don't see all your Edge tabs. And we're going to keep moving on. So, virtual desktops, make sure this is on only the desktop I'm using and only the desktop I'm using. I get some people who don't have second monitors do use the virtual desktop. So, for example, if I hit Windows tab here, you can see my virtual desktops, and I only have one, but usually they would have a second desktop for like monitoring stuff, or like say another browser tab or something like that. But I generally have that off because I don't use virtual desktops. Projecting on this PC, I would not recommend disabling this on a school laptop, but on a desktop or your own gaming laptop, please have this off. Shared experiences, this is very important to have off if you are on a gaming laptop or a gaming desktop, as it does nothing. It just shares a bunch of crap in the background. So we're going to move on down here to remote desktop. Make sure remote desktop is disabled if you don't use it. But if you are on a school laptop or if you are on a laptop that is managed, this setting will not let you be changed. But if you don't want people hacking into your computer or snooping around, I generally recommend to have remote desktop disabled. All right, moving on to the next tab. So here in the personalization tab, I like to set my background to solid color, black. I go to custom, make sure that my black is a black, 0 on the RGB scale, everything. And then I hit OK. Generally, a black background will not increase your performance. It's just a background, guys. But what it does do is it helps make the monitor have a higher lifespan. So that way you won't get bleed or monitor bleed that some TN panels get, like mine. Mine already started because for the first 2 years I had this monitor, I used a background. But generally you just want to have it as a black background, as it helps you focus more if you tab out and other stuff. Colors, okay, this is just personal preference, but I use dark mode, and then I have my color set to orange because I like orange. And obviously the stock default one looks like garbage to me. I do not like that color. So set it back to orange because that's my favorite color. Move it back, make sure this is on. I don't like titles and menu borders. I only like the start, taskbar, and other stuff. Although a fully dark theme does look good, I will admit that. Full dark looks beautiful. Although I just like my orange, so that's why I keep orange. Moving on, lock screen. Make sure all these are empty. That's empty. None. Get tips, turn that off. This is disabled because I fully disabled the lock screen because I don't use it. Moving on, fonts, make sure this has no extra fonts installed. These should all be stock fonts you get with Windows. Start, now here you just only want show app list and start menu, and show recently added apps you want on, but I don't do that. So I generally prefer to not see all the recent apps I added, and I just like to scroll through all my apps and take a look at them usually. Normally, this is old calculator from Windows 7. I deleted my normal calculator, so that's why it looks so funky, but I mean it still works like a regular calculator would. So yeah, I'll talk about that in another video. So once you've disabled everything except show apps and app list and start menu, and you've gone ahead and deleted all the tiles that are in this tab usually, then you can go ahead and close out of this. Taskbar settings, I generally like to have locked taskbar on, so I can't like adjust anything in the taskbar, but for some reason it still lets me adjust it anyway. I don't know why. Some people have this on because they like it, you know how it hides the desktop and stuff like that, but I don't like that personally. So essentially here, I like to have labels off, but some people like to have them on. Personally, I don't like them on, so I have it on hide labels, but if you really want to, you can have it like the old Windows 7 way or the old Windows XP way and have it on labels, but I really don't care. This is just a personal preference, but you can have it can be on the right side or any of the other sides, the dock, any of that. I don't need to touch on that. The setting I do need to touch on though is select which icons appear in the taskbar. So by default, you get this little doodad down here, this little menu thing. I hate that. I don't like that. So you can turn that off by doing this, and then you can see all the apps that are running currently, but you will lose a little bit of taskbar space, which I am willing to sacrifice because I do not use that very often. So now that you've been done in here, we can go out of the Personalization tab and move on to the Apps tab. So in the Apps tab, you basically just want to scroll through this and delete every single Microsoft app or Xbox if you don't use it or any of that. I don't want any Microsoft apps, any of that. I have a very, very, very strict version of Windows. I deleted every Microsoft app in existence on this PC. No Microsoft apps exist anymore on this PC, except for Edge. You cannot delete Edge for some reason. I do not know why. Moving on, once you've deleted those apps that you don't want to use, default apps, you want to make sure that these are set up correctly, like your web browser, your video player, the Windows photo viewer. I'm going to touch later on in the video about why that is important to have instead of that and how it can improve performance, and it's just personal preference again. I don't really care. Offline maps, make sure this is set to auto disabled or disable auto sync for map data, and then click delete map data, let it delete the map data and forget about it. I just have this setting off again, don't need this. So video playback tab, make sure HDR is off, make sure automatically process video to enhance it is off, and then get out of there. You don't need that. Startup apps, this is a little shortcut to the Task Manager startup apps right here, but that again, that does not show you everything, so that is what I'm going to touch later in this video, and we're going to move on. We are done with the settings app, although I did just forget one setting, so we're going to go back into the privacy tab. I just totally forgot about it. So here in the general tab, you want to have every single one of these disabled. So show me suggested content, saying out, blah, blah, blah. Yep, all this disabled. This is tracking stuff, advertising ID. They call it an ID, which I think is really dumb because it is not an ID. In fact, it is a whole tracking history of everything you do on your computer. Moving on, speech doesn't load because I have that disabled. Off. Make sure it's on only required for diagnostics data. Tailored experiences, 100% make sure this is off. View diagnostic data, 100% make sure this is off. Delete your diagnostic data. Feedback frequency, off, never. But if you are an insider, you do have to leave this on recommended, which sucks. Moving down, we want to keep scrolling down here. Make sure notifications are only allowed to the apps that you actually use. We're going to go down here to a little section called background apps. Make sure this is off. If this is on and you see a bunch of apps inside of here, disable it. You do not need it. All these apps that run in the background take up precious resources of your RAM and other stuff like your CPU and network. You do not need it. App diagnostics, make sure app diagnostic data is off. You do not need that on. That is just stuff that goes sent to Microsoft. And now we are done with the settings app. So now that you've disabled all the setting app stuff, let's move on to this application. The first application that I recommend using. It is called Shutup 10. Very well. This has been around since version 1809 on Windows, and it is the best thing since sliced bread. No, seriously guys, it is. So what you want to do is right click on it, hit yes, run as administrator. Once the app launches, you will see a GUI interface like this, and this won't pop up because I've changed settings. Essentially, the only thing that you want to do in here is click actions, apply recommended settings, hit yes. Do you want to create a restore point? Hit yes. I've already done this, so I don't need to do this. But once that finishes creating the restore point, all these should turn green. Scrolling down, all these should turn green. Basically, all the sliders that are green. This is just disabling all the tracking that Microsoft has on you, and it will also increase system performance. Moving on, I like to use this application called MSI mode. MSI mode is essentially your driver. You can enable the maximum amount of performance out of your GPU This is enabled by default on 20 series cards, so like the RTX 2060, 2070, 2080, 2080 Super, or 3060, 3060 Ti, 3070, essentially anything in the 20 series to 30 series, this is enabled by default. But for anything below that, it is disabled. I do not know why it is disabled. For some reason it is. This will be automatically enabled. For some reason, weirdly, this is enabled on laptops. I don't know why MSI mode is enabled on laptops, but it is. And essentially, once you enable this, hit apply, exit, and we are moving on. So the next thing that I like to usually do after I've done all that MSI mode stuff and all that other stuff is just generally take a look at my Nvidia control panel. Now sometimes you can't find it down in the corner here. That's okay. You just look up Nvidia control panel, launch it. That will not be the tab it goes to. It will go to this page right here. Now, by default, this is set to quality. I would highly recommend clicking use my personal preference, emphasizing and dragging the slider to performance. This image is not representatory of anything that will be in games. Just hit apply, go to manage 3D settings, make sure all these are set to off from that setting. And the only settings that I say to change are your monitor technology. Make sure this is not set on G-Sync compatible and set on fixed refresh rate. And then your open rendering GPU, your OpenGL rendering GPU should be set to your actual GPU. Prefer maximum performance should be set on power management mode. This is for desktop only. If you are on a gaming laptop or a regular laptop with Nvidia graphics, please keep this on optimal power. Do not change it to prefer maximum performance. You will essentially be crippling your laptop and it will be decreasing the battery life. If you're always tethered to a cord, I guess you could have this on prefer maximum performance, but generally it's not a good idea to have on if you're on a laptop. Moving on, we have the preferred refresh rate. This is the highest refresh rate that your monitor can handle. So essentially 144 Hertz or 200 Hertz on my PC right here. You want to just change this to highest available. And then we're going to move on here. Texture filtering quality, have this on high performance on a desktop, and on a laptop, have this on just plain performance. Because I did notice that my battery life was less on my gaming laptop when I had this on high performance than on performance. And if you really want to have battery life, just keep it on quality because, you know, it doesn't really matter. This setting is just nitpicky. It doesn't really affect your FPS that much or anything. I just like to keep it on high performance. So moving on, make sure this is on, auto, off, make sure that vertical sync is off. You do not want vertical sync in games. Guys, that just makes your input latency horrible and it syncs it to your monitor's refresh rate. Maximum pre-rendered frames, make sure this is set on 1, where you're gonna move on to the physics tab or the configure surround tab. You want to set your preferred processor to your GPU. Usually this is set to auto select by default. Make sure this is set on your GPU, hit apply, and we'll move on. So going to your change resolution here, make sure that your monitor is set at its maximum refresh rate. Some are set by default to this, the Ultra HD SD, which sets to 60 Hertz. This is PC 144 Hertz. It's gonna flash my screen for a second. Oh, surprisingly it didn't flash on OBS. Okay, well it flashed my screen here. You want to make sure this is always at your maximum refresh rate. If you have a 60 Hertz monitor, that's okay. 60 Hertz, just fine. I have noticed that TVs and like other monitors will have 59 Hertz as their refresh rate. It's not a perfect 60. When you switch it over to the Ultra HD modes instead of the native resolution of 1360 by 768, because this TV can handle 1080p video. It's just that the PC input, the HDMI input on this, thinks that it should be running at 1360 by 768, which I think is really dumb. So again, don't change the refresh rate of your second monitor, just leave it at whatever it was. And we're going to move on to the G-Sync settings. So the reasons why you shouldn't have G-Sync enabled. So G-Sync is essentially only meant for games that get less than your monitor's refresh rate. So say you have a 144 Hertz monitor or a 120 Hertz monitor, and I'm getting 100 FPS. Well, then it will drop your monitor's refresh rate down to 100 while you're playing the game, so you don't feel a noticeable difference in smoothness. It will be smooth. But that constant adjusting of refresh rate is actually what kills your performance. Not only your performance, but it also makes that fancy dancy 1 millisecond monitor that you bought be more like 5, 6, or 7 milliseconds, and that really is bad. It just increases input latency, so just leave it off. All right, moving on, we'll go to the adjust desktop size and position settings. Now on laptops, the only option that will be on the laptop is GPU. Sadly, you guys do not get display scaling on a laptop. I do not know why, but that is the only setting you can have on GPU on laptops. But if you connect an external display to the laptop, it will let you do this. So set your display scaling on display if your display supports it, and then set it to no scaling. Essentially what this is going to do is it's going to be the raw input latency of your display handling the refresh rate and handling the scaling. So like resolutions and stuff like that, the GPU will not be controlling that. It will be whatever the monitor says it can handle for display. So for example, I have all these resolutions all the way down to 800 by 600. And if I set it to any of those, it'll be the monitor scaling it and not the graphics card. I set this to no scaling. I set my secondary monitor to aspect ratio because you want it to be set to that so that you have a decent looking whatever application you're using, because some can go clip through the actual monitor, like, you know, clip off of it, or like I have it now, see where it clips off. That'll stop it and it'll be like this instead of like this. Okay, moving on, we are done in the Nvidia control panel. If we already did MSI mode, I will have to look back in the video, but if you haven't enabled MSI mode already, just launch it as administrator like that, and then go ahead and switch your graphics card Nvidia to on. I probably already touched on that, I just forgot. I'm just going through this video really quick. Next, you're going to check to see if you have the best version of Nvidia driver for your graphics card. So this is the Nvidia driver that I have been testing, and it is very good for latency. Most likely, if you have GeForce Experience installed, it has been updating this driver to the latest driver, and I highly recommend getting rid of GeForce Experience. Now, if you're using Nvidia Shadowplay Capture, I do have an alternative. It is Obs Instant Replay. You can look up how to set it up. It is exactly like that, and it actually takes less resources than the Shadowplay sometimes. Although it is more of a pain to set up, although it is better than Shadowplay. It will not dip your frames at all. When Shadowplay and GeForce Experience, they dip your FPS heavily. Sometimes it's a 15 to 20 FPS dip, which is really bad. It's not noticeable, guys, on 30 series cards, so I guess if you have a 30 series card, you can leave it enabled. But if you're a very, very high-end gamer who wants the best FPS and all that other stuff, I highly recommend deleting GeForce Experience if you have it and just going with the raw display driver. Look up a video on how to properly clean install a GPU driver. I do not have time in this video to show you how to properly clean install a driver, but when I do, I will go ahead and post that video. So I recommend staying on 471.11. Make sure that is cleanly installed. Go off the manage 3D settings that I have told you about in the bit of the video at the beginning, and then close. So next, we're going to move on to the Nvidia Profile Inspector. Now this is where you're going to see the most performance jump. So once you've installed either the raw clean driver, or you have already installed a clean driver before, if you are a tweaker or someone who tweaks drivers in Windows and all this other stuff, you'll know about this program. But if you don't know what this program is, essentially what it does is it's the hidden Nvidia settings that you cannot see. So once you're in this program, go ahead and scroll down to CUDA force to pstate and switch this to off. Essentially what this does is this is just another state, another power saving state, or another state that saves your graphics card. Whenever you start streaming, your memory clock will drop by 500 megahertz, and that really sucks because for some reason, I don't know why, it's just Nvidia, how they made their drivers. I've done much testing, and having this off did not affect my temperatures or my clock speeds, which is exactly what you want when you're gaming. So I generally recommend to have this off, but if it is causing frame drop issues, just turn it back on. So moving on, we're going to scroll down here into other, and we're going to be looking for Nvidia predefined arsenal usage. You want to set this to allow, disallowed instead of allowed. Essentially what that is going to do is that is going to strip your driver, and the only thing that you're going to see open that is related to Nvidia is the Nvidia container. And if you go to Nvidia container, the only thing that will be underneath there is the display driver, and that is essentially the debloated version of the Nvidia driver without having to go through the debloat process. So now that you're done in there, just hit apply changes and apply changes again, and then hit close, and you are now done with your Nvidia driver optimization. The next thing that I like to check here is in GPU-Z. This is another handy application that you can download. Just click yes. Again, this is if you're on a desktop or a laptop. Laptops are generally going to be limited to 8x bandwidth, but you want to make sure that this number here is the highest it possibly can be. So for example, it says this graphics card reports that it can run PCI Express 16x 3.0, and it is currently running at PCI Express 16x 3.0. Now, lanes are very important, and I generally recommend not having a second graphics card in the system, because that will make it so that your graphics card runs at 8x instead of 16, and you'll be losing that little extra bit of bandwidth, which will highly affect your FPS. It's almost a 40 to 50 to sometimes 100 to 80 FPS cut on some graphics cards. Now, my graphics card, I did not really notice that much of a difference when I went down to 8x and I plugged in my other GPU, my 960, to stream and record, to take all the stuff off. But right now, everything seems fine. It's at idle. My GPU is idling. I'm not really doing much on it. It's fine. But yeah, you just want to double check, make sure that your bandwidth is set to the highest it can possibly be before we do any tweaks with that. So now that we are done optimizing this part of Windows, I'm going to go to my Services tab. Now, there's a lot of services that you can disable, but generally, I usually disable a couple of these. So the Apex deployment service, do not disable this if you are using any Microsoft applications. Any Microsoft Store applications or any Microsoft applications will not work if you do have this service disabled, including Microsoft Office. Now, I do not use Office on this PC, but I do use it on my laptop, so I have to have this enabled. This causes latency, and it also takes a crap ton of RAM, so I usually have this disabled. And the way you disable it is that you use this command right here. This is the right here, disable in registry. I have it right here. So essentially you just copy this. I will have this linked in the description as well. This file is very helpful. You want to go to your registry editor, hit yes. You want to go here, delete whatever's here, paste, make sure there's a slash like that. And you want to set the startup type to 4 hexadecimal value right here, start, Apex, hit start, 4, hit OK, close. This will disable Apex at startup, and if you want to change it back, you can set it to 3. Now, these tweaks right here, you don't have to worry about right now. I will explain those later, but we're going to keep going through the services menu here. So, moving on, auto time zone updater. Do not have this on if you are just in a single time zone. It does not make sense, but if you are constantly traveling, it does. Again, another background service that's kind of useless. You do not need it. Application layer gateway, I have this disabled obviously, and application management, I have this disabled as well because I don't use any of that stuff. I don't need to have this stuff on. All right, so moving on, we have the background intelligence transfer service. This controls Windows updates, MSN Explorer, and other programs that download from the web. So for these services, these are what control Windows updates. Again, only disable these if you 100% do not want Windows to update. But here's how I fully disable them. So I go here, I go to recovery, and I change these to take no action, take no action, take no action, and I set them to 0 days, and then I hit apply. That way that service will never start up again, and I won't have to deal with it. So after you've disabled that service, we're going to keep moving down Disable all BitLocker services, Bluetooth, because I don't have Bluetooth on this motherboard or on this computer, so I don't use that. But if you do use Bluetooth, go ahead and keep that on. Although that does increase DCP latency, I do not really care. Compatibility Access Manager service. Sometimes you can disable this, but I did notice that I can't troubleshoot applications if they stop working anymore if I have this disabled. Capture service enables options to screen capture functionality. This is for the Xbox stuff. Please have this disabled. You do not need that enabled. It is just not good. Cellular time, you do want this on because for some reason I turned it off and my network stopped syncing, and I don't know why. It's just something that I have to keep on. A lot of these services you can keep on manual, like the clipboard service. That's my Cloudflare service, so I don't need that on. Here's the big ones though. Connected devices and platform services. This is a tracking service from Microsoft. Have this disabled. Connected user platform user services. Make sure that this is disabled as well. This is another tracking service. And connected user experiences and telemetry. This is the stuff that tracks your activity and other junk from applications. This has to be disabled because it takes so many resources, I cannot tell you. And it also just is taking bandwidth in the background without you knowing. Consult allows you to auto-connect to PC and pair to Wi-Fi displays and Bluetooth devices. I do not have any Wi-Fi displays or Bluetooth devices, so I disable this service. Contact data, I don't use contacts, so I have that disabled as well. We're going to move down. Whatever service that controls all the trusted policies and stuff related to Windows files. You can't disable this. I've tried to disable this multiple times, but essentially it's pretty much useless if you have Windows Update disabled. So I generally recommend having that on, but you can disable it and get a little bit of extra performance, but then Windows will not like it. Alright, data sharing service. I have this on because this is important. This allows applications to copy between each other, and if you have this off, you will not be able to modify files between devices like USBs and actually files on hard drives and stuff. Data usage. This is generally useless unless you want to see the actual network data usage that you have in Windows in the settings app. Now, if you like seeing your data usage because you have a limited data plan, go ahead and keep this on. But if you do not, please turn it off. It is just taking resources in the background, taking your space. Just have it off. All right, we're going to keep going here. A lot of these services are set to enabled. All right, device wireless application protocol. Have this set to disabled. Do not need that, although I'd recommend keeping this on if you don't know what it means. This is wireless access point. I don't know why. Keep moving on. Device picker, again, disable this if you don't need it. We're going to keep going down here. All diagnostic policy services, make sure these are all disabled, especially if you are on a hard drive machine. This will very much speed it up. All right, make sure dialog blocking service, make sure that's off. That's the service that is Windows Defender. Display enhancement service, again, you should keep this on if you have an auto brightness display. But if you do not have an auto brightness display, keep this off. All right, we're going to keep moving down. Distributed link tracking clients. Keep this on if you have a file share server. Keep this off if you do not have a file share server. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, downloaded maps manager. I recommend having this to disabled. You do not need the maps constantly syncing in the background. This is not a tablet, so go ahead and keep that off. Encrypted file system. Now, this is kind of controversial. I mean, you could have this on, but I have it disabled because I don't need my files encrypted. Although if you do like that extra bit of security, you can go ahead and have this service enabled. It just adds an extra layer of security to your device. Well, anyway, moving on, we have the fax service. Who the hell uses fax anymore except for schools and some businesses? Fax, again, disable file history service. Don't need that either. Let's see here. Function discovery. This is to discover all your devices on the network, you don't need that on. Game DVR and broadcast service, have this off. It won't let you disable it by default. That is one of the services that I'll be showing you in a bit. Geolocation service, have this off if you don't want your location constantly being updated. Google Chrome evaluation service, have this set to off. Now, don't disable these update services, GD update and GD EDP update, or whatever, EDMP update, whatever these are. Have these set to manual. Manual is what you want those set to instead of automatic, because then you can still update Google Chrome even if you have this service disabled. This service just maintains Google Chrome. It's kind of useless. Moving on, we have Hyper-V. I do not use Hyper-V, so I have all that disabled. All right, moving on again, keep going down to these services until I see disabled. Messaging service, I do not use the Messages app on here or any Microsoft app, so I have this disabled. Microsoft Diagnostic Hub, I have that disabled as well because I do not want diagnostic data going to Microsoft. I do not care. Microsoft V users and virtual applications, I do not use any virtual applications, so that's why I keep that disabled. Microsoft Antivirus Defender Inspection Service. These services you will not be able to disable without a tweak. I am about to show you in the next part of this video, so stay tuned for that. Microsoft Defender Services, all disabled. I do not use that. Edge, again, if you use Edge, please keep the Edge update services on, but keep the Edge evaluation service off. Make sure these are set to manual, and then keep going. Passport, you can disable this. Keyboard filter, this is the tracking service for the keyboard that controls your mapping and all this other stuff. Have that disabled. Manages internet, SSE or whatever the heck those are. Have that off. Keep going here. Microsoft Store Spaces, keep that off. That is just storage management. You do not need that on. That is just storage management for your computer. Microsoft Store Install Service, I completely deleted and wiped Microsoft Store from my PC. I do not want it on my PC, so I have that set to disabled. This will also make it so that your driver doesn't install from the Microsoft Store your Nvidia control panel, so I recommend having that off. Windows Update Health Service, again, if you want to disable Windows updates, this service will need to be disabled. And then we're going to keep going here. Windows SMS Routing Service, again, this is for a messaging app. We do not use any of those except for Discord. By the way, join our Discord, link in the description. Great community, great people. You guys will love each other there. And I answer questions. I am active on Discord every single day. Well, not every single day, but most of the days I'm active. You can talk to me there, guys. Again, link in description. Now, as we're moving on here, we have neutral authentication. I don't have any authentication crap, so I have that disabled as well. Network connections broker. This is for Windows apps. Again, do not disable this if you use any Windows apps, as it will break them. Again, I don't use any Windows apps, so I just have that disabled. Offline files. Disable this. This is useless. Optimize drives. Have this on manual. Don't have it on automatic, because then you can still defragment your drives and still optimize your drives, even if the services are disabled. Moving on, parental controls. If you're an administrator on your laptop, not a parent, have this disabled. Payments. I don't do any payments or NFC on mine, so I have that disabled as well. Peer name resolution protocol. I have that disabled as well. Peer network grouping, I have that disabled as well. Again, these are all optional. I do not recommend disabling any of these right here, because these are all network related. None of these if you do a lot on the network. So we'll keep going down here. Performance, logs, and alerts. I recommend keeping this on if you have frequent problems with your computer. I don't, because I have everything optimized and all well good. So we're going to go down. Phone service. I do not use a phone or an IP phone on this device, so I have that disabled as well. Plug and play. Keep this enabled. This will help install drivers for your devices when you use them. We're going to keep going down. And print spooler. Again, if you don't print anything, I 100% recommend having this off, because this service is useless unless you print, which I do not print, so I have this off. Printer extensions, same thing. Printer, basically everything printer off. And now we'll move on here. Quality Windows audio and video experience. I actually recommend having this on if you're on a 2-in-1 tablet or a fancy dancy 2-in-1 tablet with HDR and like enhancements and stuff like that, you might want to keep that on. But generally, I usually have this disabled. This is just dumb. I don't need that quality Windows audio video experience, as they call it. All right, we're going to keep moving here. Remote access. I have all remote access disabled to my device, so I can't remote into it, or anybody can remote into it and see what I'm doing. I do not like that. I have privacy issues, and I do not like people looking at my stuff. So we're going to keep going down here. Remote protocol call RPC locator. This can be disabled. This is absolutely useless. This just locates your device if it is lost and other junk like that. It is so dumb. Remote registry, don't need this enabled unless you are remotely managing this computer, which I'm sure nobody is. Retail service demo. Why is this even on here? This is only supposed to be for like stores and stuff like that. You know, like if you go into Walmart or I don't know, whatever store that sells computers there, they're going to have that. And it's going to just be like a display item or whatever. Moving on, we have routing and access services. Only disable this if you don't want your computer to be recognized all over the network. All right, let's keep going. Security accounts manager, you want this off. This is just to manage the security of your account, and it's just generally dumb. Keep this on if you want a peace of mind with your account and to have security updates and stuff like that. Security center, disabled obviously. Sensor dataset, do not disable sensor dataset if you are on a 2-in-1 laptop. If you are on a 2-in-1 tablet laptop, this will break a lot of things. I do not recommend disabling that on a 2-in-1 laptop, but you can disable it on a gaming laptop or regular desktop. Sensor monitoring service, again, do not disable this if you are on a 2-in-1 laptop. In fact, any of the sensor services do not disable on a 2-in-1 laptop, but any other laptop is fine. All right, we're going to move on down here to server. So supports file print. Again, if you are using a home server or you print a lot, keep server on. Although shared account PC manager, that's pretty stupid. You don't need that. And basically all these other stuff down here, shell hardware detection, don't need that. Smart card, don't need that. Software card removal policy, don't need that. SNMP, don't need that. Software protection, keep that enabled because it's their software protection from Microsoft. Even if you don't have the antivirus on, it will still protect all the files and stuff like that. So I recommend keeping this on. All right, we're gonna keep going down here. So spatial data, I have this off because I don't know what the hell it means and it didn't affect anything in my testing. Any update service for your mice or your programs, make sure that these are off because you don't want your apps constantly auto updating in the background, stealing your bandwidth and other stuff. All right, this one's kind of controversial. Storage service. Provides enabling services for storage extensions and storage expansion. This is the setting that essentially just recognizes your USB and asks you what to do with it. But if you have this disabled, it just detects it as a plain USB storage device, and it does not say, what do you want to do with this device? It just tells you nothing, and it just has it inserted in nothing. Storage tiers, again, disable this because it just optimizes data storage. It's kind of stupid, don't need this. Sync host, again, if you are using Microsoft apps only. This is only if you are using Microsoft apps. Keep sync host on. Sysmain, keep this on a hard drive laptop because it will reduce the usage of your RAM and your general system usage. Now, yes, it does increase DCP latency, and yes, it does have bad spikes, and yes, it does pin your disk at 100% if you have a hard drive, but only for a little bit. In testing on my crappy PC that I have here, my crappy test PC that I have lying around, it's on another monitor, you just can't see it. Essentially, I enabled this service, and my RAM usage dropped from 2.5 gigabyte on a 4 gigabyte system all the way down to 1.6 to 1.4. after running a couple of times, and my drive usage would go down after 2 minutes of use on the system. So keep this on if you're on a hard drive device or a hard drive laptop. Do not have it enabled if you are on an SSD machine or a machine that uses solid state storage. It's just useless. We're going to keep going down here through my services. We're almost to the end of my services. So right here we have TCP Net BIOS Helper. You can disable that unless you're using a file share or printing. Again, keep this off if you are not using any of those. But if you're using file sharing or you're using network sharing, keep this on. Telegraph or whatever this is for LAN stuff and services. Keep this on again if you are using a server. Themes, I don't use themes, so I have that disabled. Touch keyboard and handwriting panel service. Now this is a controversial one. So this is enabled by default, but essentially what it is it's just that keyboard you get on a 2-in-1 tablet. So that's if I were to touch the screen like this, boop, touch my screen, and I were to touch something in the text field, it would bring up the keyboard. Now, if you're not on a 2-in-1 laptop, again, I recommend having the service disabled as it is useless and just adds more resources and latency. So we're going to keep going down. Update orchestral service. This is the actual Windows update service. So if you want to have it disabled, in fact, I recommend doing this if you are not doing anything with it. So you go back here, you go to recovery, take no action, take no action, take no action, set this to 0 days, hit apply, and it'll never turn on again. This is the Windows update service. This is what controls Windows updates. Again, if you want Windows updates, please keep this service on. So we're going to keep moving down here. User data storage. This is for contacts and other stuff like that. I have that disabled. You can disable that if you want to not sync contacts, calendars, and info, stuff like that. Moving on, we have Web Account Manager. This is just for sign-on to apps and services. I like to keep this disabled because I don't use any Microsoft apps. I don't need it to remember my logins. I can just log in because I remember the passwords to everything. Moving on down, we have Web Client. Again, this is meant for Windows apps and certain file servers. So I would recommend keeping Web Client on if you are doing file server stuff or if you have in-home server stuff. Moving on down, we have the Wi-Fi Direct services. Keep this on if you are using a wireless display or a docking station. Do not keep it on if you are on a desktop. It is useless. Alright, Windows Backup Service, disabled. Windows Biometric Service, keep that disabled as well. Those two services are useless. Camera Frame Server. Keep this enabled if you still want to use the stock Windows Camera app, but if you already deleted all the Windows apps, then you do not need this on. I have it on manual though because I had some issues with OBS if I had this off, so I keep it on. Alright, Connect Now feature, the most useless feature in Windows. Yes. So basically what this does is it just connects to whatever it gets, the first connection it sees or something like that. It just connects right away. The second you click something, it is for a wireless display. Again, that is useless. Windows Defender and Threat Protection. Again, this is totally biased to me, but I like to have it disabled because it does give you extra performance, and I have another antivirus that I use called Malwarebytes that I can check monthly instead of having this run in the background all the time and take resources. And I do know that the antivirus or anti-malware service does take a lot of resources for some of you users out there. So I think that pretty much is the end here. There's not really much more here in the services to disable other than the error reporting and error log. Yeah, the Windows Insider service, you can have that disabled. Image stuff, you can have that disabled. And anything here related to, oh, I don't know why that was off. That should be on. Manual. Okay, so disable the media player sharing unless, again, if you are using a file share server, keep that on. You want that on. Mixed reality, have that off. Any of these other settings down here, you can pause the video at any time you want to take a look at these settings and disable them yourself. Yeah, we're pretty much done here. So yeah, you can disable all these other ones in the bottom too if you don't like them. And we are done with the services app. So moving on here, we have hard drive or SSD behavior. All right, so I'm gonna go here, down to your search, open up a new PowerShell window, hit run as administrator, hit yes, take the commands here that are relative to your device. So if you have a hard drive, use these commands up here. And if you have an SSD, use these commands here. I have an SSD, so I'm going to set this here. So I go to here, I hit paste, yes. Now I go to here, I copy this, click this, and hit yes. I kind of screwed that up, but I remember the command, so. All right. So essentially what this does is it'll give you a little bit of extra performance out of your drive. Not that much noticeable, but it will. And it's very important that that is enabled if you want the maximum performance out of your SSD. So moving on, we now have the Power Settings Explorer. So I'm going to show you right now how to install my power plan if you haven't already. This is pretty simple. So I actually have to go in right now and I have to change back to my Ryzen plan and delete the Bitsum plan. I'm going to fully disable the Bitsum plan and delete it so that I only have the Ryzen balanced and my high performance plan. Ignore the ultimate performance plan. I was doing testing with that. It's garbage. So to install the custom Bitsum power plan, you want to go into your C drive, create a folder called PowerSchemes. Yes, so you go here, you name it PowerSchemes, no spaces, capital P, capital S, hit apply. Now I have other plans in here, but the only one that you want in here is the Bitsum Highest Performance plan that I will have a download to in the description. And once you have downloaded that and put it in the folder in the C drive, you want to open up a new command prompt window. So command prompt, and make sure that's ran as administrator. Oops, ran as administrator. This up. Then you're going to want to type this command, powercfg import C, and then that, and it'll say successfully imported. So then you can close out of both of these. Once you close out of them, you can go ahead and go down here, search for power options, go here, edit power plan, whatever, get to the power options tab, and then you will see Bitsum Highest Performance. Now, we are not done with this yet. This is my optimized Bitsum performance to my liking and to my knowledge that it reduced the latency to my system, but we are going to make one change. So the change that we are going to make is we are going to open up an application called Power Settings Explorer. Now, the only things that you are looking for inside of this particular program are related to the power settings. So I'm going to turn off my webcam here for a moment. The only things that you want to look for in here are inside of this tab right here, the power management configuration. Now I have these all unchecked because I was tweaking a profile, but essentially what you want to do is you want to look for processor idle demote threshold. Again, that is under the processor power management, and you want to look for processor idle demote threshold, and you want to uncheck this. It says hidden, uncheck it, and then move down. Keep going until you find processor idle promote threshold. Again, this is underneath the Bitsum Highest Performance plan, the active plan. You want to click this, and then you want to have the check mark off of it. So once you have done those two, you will go into your power options. In the Bitsum Highest plan here, you want to click Change Advanced Settings, and you will want to scroll down to Processor Power Management. I have more than you, but essentially you just want to go to Processor Performance or Processor Idle Demote Threshold and set this to 100%. And then you want to keep going down until you find Processor Idle Premote Threshold. Should be here somewhere, processor idle premote threshold, and you want to set this to 100% as well. Now, essentially what that does is it makes it so that your processor at idle will not throttle down. It will make it so that the NT system kernel never goes to idle. So the system is always sitting at 100%. Like, it is the highest priority is your system. It will not go into a lower C state, and all C states will be disabled. Now, this does not work on some CPUs and some laptops. Some laptops you can't disable the C state on, but this will help reduce C states, and it will make the NT system kernel also have a lower latency. Now that you've installed my power plan and you have also changed that setting, we are going to go into this program I like to call the Interrupt Affinity Policy tool. Now, this tool I will have a link for in the description in my folder, but essentially what this does is it allows you to pin to other cores. If you are a professional YouTuber or a person who tweaks a lot, you will know exactly what this application does, but for any of you newbies, I'm about to explain exactly what this does. So right here, I have two files. This is my TCP latency before. So I had 278 here, 202, 31, and this is just with the stock driver with the Nvidia settings that I mentioned in previous videos. But essentially right here, you want to find stuff. So we're going to open up our device manager. We're going to look for the display adapter. This will be a different name for your display adapter. You want to click the View tab inside of the device manager, hit Devices by Connection, scroll down, and you will see this. This is where your Nvidia display driver is housed, and you will not need to do anything else in here other than right-click on your PCI to PCI bridge, and then look for this number, location. This, for example, this is on 031. This is universal to most PCs. It'll be on 031. But if it isn't, just look for this number, match it up with PCI to PCI bridge. So for example, it's matched right there. This is the PCI Express card or the PCI Express lane dedicated to your GPU. And right now we are taking the load off of CPU 0. So for example, I like to pin these to CPU 1 and 2, but it's actually not 1 and 2. 1 is the CPU core 1 and 2 is its hyper-threaded core. So essentially you are pinning this to CPU 1, which in my opinion is the fastest CPU on my Ryzen CPU. Now, let me explain right now on Ryzen specifically how you can find your fastest core. So I'm going to open up Ryzen Master right now, download Ryzen Master, hit OK, and then what you have to do is look. You look for the star. The golden star will be your fastest core. This is your fastest core. The gray star is your second fastest core. And then the circle dots are your most stable cores. So, for example, my most stable cores are 3 and 5. My fastest core by far is core 1, which is a good thing, which is also why I pin the bridge to core 1 and core 2. That way my CPU is communicating with the PCI lane as fast as it possibly can, and Windows is telling it to use those two cores only, or that specific core, and then that's why it's the fastest. Now, also while you're in here in the Nvidia tab, what you can do is disable the high definition audio device driver, as this does cause latency, but then the only issue is you lose monitor sound. You lose monitor sound. Guys, if you care about monitor sound, keep this enabled. If you do not care about monitor sound and you just use these headphones, then just have this disabled. If you do not use the USB-C port on the back of your graphics card, have this disabled. Now, if you're doing VR and like VR stuff, just plug it into another USB-C port on your case if you have one. You do not have to use the one on the back of your graphics card. But if you don't have a USB-C port and you want to use VR, then you can go ahead and have this set to enabled. And then the PCI device, this will be a red or a triangle if you do a clean install. So go ahead and have this set to disabled. This is not important. We don't use that. And we can go ahead and close out of the device manager. So now this is the hard part. You will have to go through each one of these devices and you'll have to find USB controllers. USB compliant host controller. For example, here I have that set to core 3. and you're going to slowly go through each one of these until you find anything that says USB 3.0 or USB compliant drivers or USB XGS compliant host controller. Anything that's USB 3.0, just pin it to another core. It doesn't have to be a core, just pin it to a random core. And once you've pinned it to a random core, it will respond better and overall faster. I noticed that as soon as I did this, my cores just generally responded faster, and it was definitely much faster than it was before. So we're going to keep going down through this list, and we are going to keep looking for USB stuff. So don't ignore USB input devices. Do not pin these to other cores. Those are your USB, like actual mouse stuff and like important mice stuff. Now on laptops, this is going to be different, but basically anything that says USB 3.0 or USB root hub, go ahead, pin these to a different core. You do not need them to be on core 0, as they will make more latency. So now we're going to scroll down here, and you're going to find your graphics card. Now, eventually you'll find your graphics card. Once you find your graphics card, you want to click on Set Mask, and this right here is the important part. So for those of you who are on a 4-core, 4-threaded system, I recommend setting this to core 2 and 3. Core 2 and 3, or 2, 3 is the fastest for you guys and the best stable. Now, if you're on a 4-core, 8-threaded CPU, set this to 4.5. Set this to 4.5. If you're on a 4-core, 8-threaded CPU, repeating, set this to core 4.5. This will help a lot with your latency. And if you are on a 6-core, 12-threaded CPU, set this to core 6.7. 6.7 on a 6-core, 12-threaded CPU will be the fastest. If you are on a core, 8-core, 16-thread, Ryzen 7 3700X or Ryzen 5, or Ryzen 7 5800X or higher, then you go ahead and set this to 8 and 9, and then hit OK. Hit OK again, hit no, hit OK, hit OK again. Now go to your task manager. If you were confused by that, go to your task manager, click performance. If you see this, just ignore that. I like to switch it to the advanced view, but you go down here, you click look for cores and logical processors. That's your cores right there, your physical amount of cores, and that is your logical amount of threads. So for example, I have 8 cores and 16 threads. So we're going to move on past this, and we're going to keep going down. So there's a lot of host controllers here, a lot of USB controllers. You just pin those to different cores. Make sure those are pinned to different cores. You don't want them to be pinned to CPU 0. And we're going to keep looking, and I've reached the end of the list for my CPU stuff. So we are done with this application now, and we do not need it anymore. The next thing that I would like you to do is go into your mouse settings. So go here to your mouse settings, and you're going to want to click additional mouse settings until you see this. So in the pointer options, turn off enhanced pointer precision. This will ruin your aim. I'm sure most of you professional gamers know about this, but if you don't know about this, please turn it off. It will make your mouse feel so much more responsive and fix your mouse curve. Moving on to pointers, I like to set this to none because then you're not affecting your performance and it's just easier to use. Whatever. It's personal preference. As for scrolling, I like to set this on 2.2. That way if I'm scrolling on a web page or something, or let's just for example scroll my desktop files, it scrolls down slow instead of fast, so that way I don't have to scroll very far. So again, this is all stuff that I look at. I just check to make sure all these don't have any power saving settings, which they do not, which is great. And then you can close out of this. Now, after you're done with that, go ahead and run the Mouse Fix Regedit. This is a Regedit made by a community member in my Discord. They went ahead and they looked for the best mouse settings and smooth mouse curves that your mice can have. Now, it is very important that you have real-time protection disabled if you have Windows Defender on. So go ahead and look at how to turn that off if you don't know how to turn off real-time protection, but have that off. Once it is off, go to mousefix.reg, hit merge, hit yes again, and then hit OK. Then start moving your mouse. It'll start to feel a little bit better, more responsive, and that is the whole deal here. So now, most of people who are in here probably want to know how to disable Defender as well if you really, really want to get rid of that pesky service anti-malware executable service that takes like 200 to 400 megabyte of your RAM. I'll show you how to disable that right now. So in my FPS low latency and boost pack, I don't generally use this pack anymore, but there is 2 or 3 registry tweaks that I use in here that actually do help. So we have the disable Windows Defender. This will vary on system to system. Sometimes it won't disable it, sometimes it will. You go to the Windows Defender here and you go to disable Windows Defender, but make sure you run PowerRun as an administrator first. Open PowerRun. If there's anything in here, delete it. You don't need that to be open. Drag the disable Windows Defender inside of it and then hit run file. This will make sure that everything gets modified and that nothing is left out. Hit yes and hit OK and then exit out. When you reboot, Windows Defender should be disabled, but if it is not, go ahead and use the second method that I am about to mention later. So all these other things do not matter because we've already done them. Although if you do want to disable the game bar, same exact thing here, run as administrator, hit yes. Go here, disable game bar, drag it in, and then hit the run file. Now this will fully disable the Windows Xbox game bar. It is useless. I hate the game bar, but if you play Xbox, please do not run this if you are playing Xbox because it will break some Xbox stuff. So now that we're done in that folder, we're going to close out of this. We're going to go into full Windows 10 latency reduction. We're going to go into Windows 10 latency options. We're going to go into Windows 10 registry options, and we're going to do a couple of things in here. Disable ease of access. Disable this if you don't want to have any of the ease of access stuff on. It's just a quick little tidbit there. Disable power throttling. Generally, I recommend to have this enabled still. Do not run this tweak if you are on a laptop because you will have horrible battery life. Horrible battery life, and it will keep your processor running hot at idle. Now, if you really want to push the performance out of your laptop and you don't care about those temps or you don't care about any of that, or you just have a Mullen laptop like I do, then you can go ahead and right click on this, hit merge, hit yes, and then you're done. Now, the last few options in here do not matter. Just ignore them. In fact, I might actually delete them in the next one that I'm giving away or the next thing that I'm doing. You do not need them. So the next thing is the Windows 10 Defender disable if it does not work correctly. So if your Windows 10 Defender didn't disable correctly from that last tweak, you can launch the Ultimate Windows Tweaker. Now, generally, I recommend not using this program if you are on a newer version of Windows, but it still does work for some of the things. So here in the Performance tab, I generally have everything disabled. So turn off Search Indexer. I have that off because the Search Indexer is useless. Increased priority of IRQ8. This will increase the data flow to the processor. Do not enable this if you are on AMD. It does not make a difference. It will make a difference if you are on Intel, so have that enabled if you are on Intel. Disable smooth scrolling, disable edge preloading, disable a bunch of these. Do not disable the tablet input service. This will disable an on-screen keyboard if you are on a 2-in-1 tablet, but if you are not on a 2-in-1 tablet, again, keep this service disabled. Next is the Windows Security Center. So you can click on this, hit disable the Windows Security Center and hit that. So disable prefetch, you want prefetch disabled, and superfetch, I'd like to have both checkmarked just in case. Hit that, and then hit apply tweaks. I'm not done yet though, so I'm not going to hit apply tweaks. In the security and privacy tab, have right here, disable Windows error monitoring and reporting, have that on. Disable Windows Defender, have that on. Disable user tracking info, have that on. Disable OneDrive, have that on. Disable Windows Mobility Center, have that on as well. Do not disable Windows Update Service, but again, if you want to 100% disable the update service, you can have this enabled. Again, I do not recommend having this enabled or disabled if you want to still update Windows. So then you can hit apply tweaks again, it'll flash the screen for a second, and then it'll come back. So in the additional tabs, this is where the advanced stuff starts coming in. So enable the network onboard adapter settings. This essentially, you only need to enable this if you're on a desktop. So if you're on a desktop machine, it will use the built-in controller on the actual network adapter instead of using your processor to do all the tasks and all the rendering. So once we have moved on to that, you can hit enable on this. But if you're on a laptop, I recommend having this disabled because the laptop has a weaker processor and other stuff. Disable all this file share stuff. Do not disable these 4 settings right here if you have a file share server. If you have a file share server, this will stop the file share server from being discovered on your computer. All right, now that we're done with that, we can close that out. Make sure you hit apply tweaks though before you do that. And we are going to move on to the final end games. So once you have done all of this, the final end games is just right clicking on the applications that you use, hitting compatibility, disable full screen optimization, go to here, change setting for all users, disable full screen optimization, change DPI settings, hide DPI settings, override, hit apply. Do this with all your applications that you use for gaming, and that is essentially it. So we've reached the end of the video. What else is there left to say? So remember earlier how I went in here into the interrupt affinity policy tool and I pinned specific stuff to specific cores. Now, core 1 and 2 and core 8 and 9 are going to have the highest CPU usage or the highest CPU latency. So I recommend downloading a program called System Explorer. Now, this is basically the modern version of Pyro or the PyOware or service or whatever that was back in Windows 7 that no longer works in Windows 10. And essentially what you're going to want to do is find all the services like the search indexer, make sure the process priority is below normal, and that is set to permanent. We want this to be a permanent change to be below normal. The affinity, we want to make sure that this is off cores 1, core 2, core 8, core 9, basically all the cores that we pinned earlier. You can look back in the video if you have to. Make sure this is on permanent and disable them for a bunch of these services. So like the search indexer, the search app, you should have that on below normal, permanent. Processor affinity, same thing, you want that off. We're gonna keep scrolling down here. I have Discord open, so just ignore that. The explorer.exe should be set to a high priority and have that as permanent. The process affinity, you should do the same thing and unpin it from whatever cores you set on the affinity tool. And as for a couple of these other things, there's a service called WinLogon. This is essentially the login service. You want to just look up WinLog, go here, process priority, set this to below normal, make sure it is on permanent. Processor affinity, don't change any of this, make sure this is just standard type, and then we are done. So this should be launching at startup. Check your task manager, go to startup, and make sure the System Explorer is enabled. I'm going to re-enable Riot Games though because I kind of want to play Valorant after this video. I know it's very early in the morning. I make these videos very early in the morning for a reason because I don't have very much time to do anything. So we're going to move on right now to the very, very, very last tweaks. So the last network tweaks that I mentioned in my videos, some of them do not apply anymore. Like the low ping bat, I would not recommend running that anymore because it breaks in newer versions of Windows, and generally it's just not good. So the next tweak I'm going to show you is a registry tweak. So this registry tweak right here will be inside of my folder. It'll be like all the other ones. So essentially, oh, I don't know why, but it's sort of broken. So let me fix that real quick. Oh, whoops. No, it isn't broken. So you take the, we don't need that slash. This registry command right here, hkey local machine. This will be in the text document. Open up regedit, run as administrator. Delete all this, go to this, make sure it goes to it. You'll see this right here. And we want to add a new dword 32-bit value. And we want to specifically name it. We want to name it capital I, capital R, capital P, capital S, and then TACK, and then capital S in size, and then the rest just of the letters. Then obviously click off of it. Once that's done, go in, hit modify, go to decimal, and switch this to 32 from whatever value it's at. Then hit OK. Essentially, this is a tweak I found that makes it so that Windows doesn't tweak your network usage at all, and it will just make it so that your internet adapter is constant performance and it will not drop. Trust me on this, guys. This tweak is amazing. I cannot thank the person enough who found this for me. I forget his name, but I think I'll put it in the description. Whoever found this for me, this is an amazing tweak, and you are an amazing person for finding it. The next thing I like to do is I like to set my net hash, but again, this is for Ethernet users only on a good connection. So if you're on a good Ethernet connection, a good one I'd say is probably 10 megabit or better. Yes, I know that's low, but that's what I consider good. Open command prompt as administrator, and then just copy and paste this command in and hit enter, and then it'll say okay. This will stop frequent pinging to your internet service provider, and it'll set a default value for your Ethernet so that it will be a constant value instead of changing. So now that we're done with this, we can close out of this. Those are all the network tweaks that we have to do. And the only thing that's left is going into every single application that we own. So for me, this would be Firefox, going into the settings, looking for hardware acceleration, and making sure that hardware acceleration is off. And then we close, reopen. Yes, I will do that because I do need to update Firefox. But now hardware acceleration is disabled, so we do not want that enabled. Next, you're going to want to go into Discord. Exclamation point Discord, by the way, or excuse me, Discord, link in the description. The Inferno, great community. I love every single one of these people who are active right now, especially at 2 a.m. in the morning. And they actually have active tech issues that we are addressing right now at this very second. So for Discord, you just want to go down here. You want to go to Appearance. Make sure, if you really want extra performance, switch it to Compact. I don't ever do that, but you know, it's whatever. Accessibility, make sure that reduce motion is on, play GIFs when focused is on, play animated emojis. I usually like to have always animate on because usually it's on animate on indication, but this works good. So anyway, moving on, we go down to the Windows settings. Make sure Open Discord is off. We do not want Discord to be opening every time that we start Windows. Go to Advanced, turn off hardware acceleration so it'll look something like this. Just hit OK. I already disabled it, but you go ahead and disable that. Move over to Voice and Video next. Go down. Make sure this is off. Although I have noticed that some people have lag when they have this off, so this does not really hit your performance that much. So just keep that on. Go down here, use our latest capture screen technology. I like to have this off, but I have noticed that having this on does make a difference, and it actually does make your experience on Discord much smoother for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, we're pretty much going to keep moving down. So that's really all that you need to do is just go in and disable a couple of things. Oh, shucks me, I forgot about the overlay. So the game overlay. Please have this disabled. This kills tons of performance in games. I've tested it and it really hits your performance bad, especially if you're on a really bad laptop. So just disable this. You can only really keep this enabled if you're playing some kind of chill game that doesn't need a whole lot of FPS and you just want to talk to your friends. So back to activity status here, all my games are in here. I generally like to keep this on just so people know what I'm doing, but again, this is another tracking thing. If you really want this off, you can. Otherwise, yeah, that's it for about Discord settings, and that's all you really need to. So, back to again, join my Discord, please. I am looking to gain more members. We are active almost all the time. This is my Discord promotion part of the video, so link in description. So, once you've disabled hardware acceleration in every single app and you have done all these tweaks, you should restart and then download an application called Latency Mon. If you already have this, then you can go ahead and launch this. Make sure that there are no background services running. I have tons of them running right now, but the only services that should be running in the background are your screen, your System Explorer, your Nvidia driver, and that is it. If there are any other background services, go into Task Manager, and from all the stuff that we mentioned, go ahead and just close them or disable them. Make sure nothing is starting at startup. All your antiviruses are off. Go ahead, click enter or click the button there, and you should see your real-time latency. Mine is going to be much higher because I am recording a video right now. If I was not recording a video, it'd be somewhere down in the 30s to 40s. Now, I'm going to keep this going for a few seconds. While I'm explaining that, let me explain what has been going on with me lately. So I'm going to put the update video in this video, but essentially what has been going on with me, guys, is that I am working constantly. I work 2 jobs to equal full-time pay. I have 2 part-time jobs. One of them I work 3 days a week. The other one I work 3 days a week. So I'm essentially working 6 days a week. And that is basically full-time. And I hardly have any time anymore to make videos or do testing. I do testing like really early in the morning like I am now. And generally I'm going to quit. And then I'm going to go into college in September, so you will not see me for a while, but that is okay because I plan on posting at least 3 to 4 videos before college starts so that you guys have a little bit of extra content before I go to college. So in that minute that I was running, this is my average latency, 60, 50, 49. That's my highest measured, but that's because, again, I'm recording a video. It's going to be higher. The only tab that you care about is the CPU tab. So when you're looking at this, you want to switch this to this, the highest. Now, CPU 4 is my highest right now, but if you take a look at my CPU 0, it's actually lower. Now, I'll show you what those values were before recording this video. This is what those values were after a 2-minute period. My CPU 0 was at the lowest and my CPU 1 was at the highest. And that is exactly what you want. You want your CPU 0 to be as down far on this thing as you want. And generally, when you move your mouse around, it should feel very, very, very responsive. And I'm actually going to open an application right now called Mouse Tester. Now, this is an awesome application. I don't remember the name of who made this, but it's called Mouse Tester. So you want to, yes, I want to not ask that every time I open the file, launch it as administrator. Set the CPI to your GPI. Hit collect. Now hold your mouse button down, let go of it, hit plot, check to see your mouse curve. I'm going to turn that data point down, data point start, we're going to do 300, data point end, we're going to do, I don't know, 800 or something. You want to look for peaks and you want to look for smooth curves in your mouse curve. So for example, mine is pretty decent. I'm going to run that test again just because I feel like I didn't get a very good... Yeah, that's a great reading. So essentially, none of these dots you want to be off the line. You want them to be as close to the line as possible. And if they're all over the place, like, let me show you what happens when I turn Enhanced Pointer Precision on. So we're going to go back to mouse settings. And I really want to show you guys how much this actually affects your performance on your mouse. So when I have Enhanced Pointer Precision on, this is going to feel like garbage. Oh God, that feels so bad. But now when I hit collect, I want you to take a look at how bad the mouse graph is when I have this on. It looks smoother, but notice something. Notice that the latency is actually much, much worse. I have this off. Now I have raw latency, And yes, the graph is going to be a little bit more jagged and jaggy, but generally the response time is much higher. And that is exactly what you want when you have a mouse. And I also recommend if you have a mouse program, so for me that'd be a SteelSeries here. I have the app installed. I have it set to not log in at startup or not launch at startup. You want to go in here, you want to go to your mice or wherever it is, and you just want to set everything to disabled. So 1000 is generally what I recommend setting your GPI to. Oh dear Jesus God, that was way too high. That was a mistake. Okay, 1500 is all right. Set this to 1000, hit continue. And I guess if you have any multiple ones, I usually recommend around 1000 to 16,000 because that's the smoothest. Make sure all of these settings are set to nothing. You don't want it doing anything. Make sure your polling rate is set to the maximum that it can go. Although if you do have a mouse that can do 8000 Hertz, I recommend, or 2000 Hertz, stay at 1000 Hertz. The mouse curve after 1000 Hertz is garbage, guys. I do not recommend having your mouse curve or mouse set past 1000 Hertz. If you have it set past 1000 Hertz polling rate, things can start to get a little bit wonky. So now that I have that set to 1000 DPI, we're going to try 1600 DPI right now just to show you how that looks. So I'm going to hit collect here and hit stop, plot data. Look at that nice smooth mouse curve at 1600 DPI. That is generally much better, and it does feel much smoother at 1600 DPI. So essentially, after you've done all these tweaks, hopefully this video helped. If it did not, please leave a comment and tell me about it. This has been Latency 101 with Flame, and I want you to like this video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, join the Discord down in the description. All the tweaks will be in the description after this video, and I want to thank you for watching, and see you next time.